So the loss of boomers and the coming of the millennials. I was reading this article where it's like 43% of millennials aren't investing money on the market, and that's a bad thing. Well, that got me thinking. So when the boomers come to rest, where's that money going? Well, I assume like most people give their money as an inheritance to their children, right? But, I don't think that necessarily will be the case. I think that between, people's, having very lavish end-of-life experiences, spending lots of money on treatment to prolong their lives, and going away, moving to Florida or something like that, and simply not giving their children their inheritance, giving their inheritance to, let's say, a charity. I know some people who, well, they are in a position where they could donate to their granddaughter, but they choose not to. They're choosing to give that money to a university instead. The university that they attended because they love that university so much. So instead of passing the money down to their son or their granddaughter, instead they're donating millions of dollars to a university. And I'm curious, I would love to see some sort of predicted, like, statistical breakdown of, or at least based upon what we know right now, how many people are giving their money to charities at the end of their life versus giving it to their children as an inheritance. Because I think that I could be wrong, because there's this sort of like instinctive, like visceral understanding of the concept of the inheritance. Why else do we work in our lives if not to further our legacies, give something to our children, right? But I think that there's also a new growing trend of, I'll just give my money to a charity when I die. I'll give my money to, the earth. I'll give my money to, I don't know, some good person thing. I think like a good person thing. Although I doubt that person's grandchildren or children would consider that to be the good person thing. But so that's just one interesting idea. So will all this money be transferred instead of, will all this boomer money, instead of being transferred to their children, be increasingly more and more so, and more after maybe Gen X will be even more like this, or the millennials will be even more like this. Is this a trend that we're going to see where at the end of one's life, and you can look at it generationally speaking, like at the end of a generation or something like that, will more and more of that money, more and more of those assets be going towards institutions, towards like systems and institutions, corporations, charities, the big man, versus going to, the biological or, familial, like descendants, as it typically would go to of that person. I don't know. So that's an interesting trend. And something else I thought about is, how a lot of Samsung phones and a lot of Android phones now, the reason why people didn't like iPhone is because of stuff like this, right? But like now, a lot of Android phones, they're getting hard, if not impossible, to root, which is basically what jailbreaking is. And you'll find that when you try to sometimes take a screenshot of a web page, it says, sorry, the security policy doesn't allow the screenshot to be taken. So that means that there's some sort of communication and agreement going on between like Samsung or whoever, or Android, and some web page, some corporation or organization that says we don't want our images to be screenshotted. And I mean, screenshotting for your own personal, for yourself, I mean, what could be a more, I don't know, it's just interesting, because I totally see, within the next 5 years, I wouldn't be surprised if, let's say, if one tries to go into, I don't know, like one of those museums, those new museums that aren't even real museums, like the Museum of Ice Cream or the Museum of Colors or whatever those silly things are. One of those like installation space type things. If someone didn't pay for a ticket and let's say they snuck in, they try to take a photo, try to take a selfie inside, and it says, sorry, this photo is prohibited or something like that. Or even, let's say you go to the museum like the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and there's a special exhibition that isn't meant to be photographed. You try to take a photo of it with your phone, which you think, this is my hardware, this belongs to me, this is, a piece of hardware that I own, and, the same way that you want to take a picture of something with a Kodak camera and store it, physically store it, you want to be able to have the same freedoms, but instead, storing it digitally on your phone. So you think that you can do it, but, your phone locks up because the phone doesn't belong to you. There was already an agreement worked out.